Hey y'all. Well, I thought I would show you all the snow. Pretty crazy, huh? See, look over there. That's the natural gas plant. Because Texas is sitting on oil and gas. It's just everywhere here. And they've been having these rolling blackouts around here because they were dumb and they put in this windmill grid over. It's about an hour drive west of here out towards Munster. These enormous windmills. I priced them before. Some of them, they cost between $250,000 and $500,000 a piece. They're unbelievable amount of money these things cost. And then they don't work when it snows or when it's cold. And they chop up the birds. And they make this noise that's really hard. It's hard to even describe. But it's pretty disturbing. Chops up the birds, chops up the insects. And as you can see, we still got natural gas coming right out of the earth over here. It's pretty crazy. Whatever rules this world, wants to charge us for being alive and charge us for things like oil and gas that literally just come right out of the earth. And they want to make it seem, this whole fossil fuel thing, I don't know what y'all think, but I've thought this was bullshit since I was a little kid. And it's because, we got 3 oil wells on one of our farms. So we've got 2 farms and a couple of separate houses. And on one of the farms, we have 3 oil wells on one farm, right? So you go in and, I don't know, back in the 80s, it probably cost you $10,000 to drill the well, put on your iron horse and your tanks, and there you go. Maybe $20,000 for everything at the time. And then you're pumping, right? You got oil, and it's coming right out of the ground. And when you start to run out of oil, the iron horse starts pumping fresh water. You start getting water. So then they put on an oil water separator. So that's when you can literally drive by and say, oh, look, that well is really good. It doesn't have a separator. Or you can say, oh, look, that well is starting to run a little dry because they got a separator on there. And what they would do is, once you pumped out whatever they had tapped there, and, it depends on, a couple of our wells pumped for like 20 years in a row with nothing, never having to have a separator and never having to be put on a timer. Because what they do is they put them on timers if they're getting to where they're pumping a lot of water. They'll put them on a timer because the oil seeps back in to the area where you've drilled to. And say you've gotten to a point where you're not getting any oil anymore, you're only getting water. What they do is they cap the well for a while and you leave it for a year or so. And then you put the iron horse back up and you start pumping again and you got oil. So when I was a little kid, I used to argue with the teachers because it didn't make any sense to me that oil was some sort of fossil fuel when it's seeping back into the damned holes that we dug, right? It doesn't make any sense that if it's only a layer of dinosaurs that have been compressed into some sort of oil, like, how do you get a whole pit of it, right? And then how does it come back, right? How do we keep getting more and more of it? And why is it just everywhere? I've never seen anything that has died around here that ever got compressed enough to become a fossil even. And if you think about it, the conditions you'd have to have for something to be fossilized like that and then somehow magically turn into oil doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So anyways, I've always thought that was bullshit. I've always thought more along the lines of the Russian scientists where they say that oil is abiotic and produced within the mantle of the earth. I think that makes a lot more sense. But, that doesn't sell peak oil, and that doesn't sell climate change, and that doesn't sell guilt. And you should pay $16 for a gallon of gas or something like that, right? Everything that we're told, we're told that cattle eating the grass is bad, but going out there and planting monocrops and plowing the field, killing everything in it, planting it, and then, harvesting it, plowing it again, actually burning it and then plowing it again. That is what saves the earth. Not just having some animals out there. Like right now, see all this land here? If they had cattle on it, they wouldn't have all those trees, right? What happens is when you don't have cattle around eating things, the land grows up to the point where you can't even walk there. And the interesting part of this area, so this area of North Texas, this area of Texas was Comanche country. And if you read some of these books about, the first settlers who came here, and they'll tell you that the grass was up as tall as like a man on top of a horse. That's how tall the grass used to be here in this like prairie land. Now we got all these trees, right? But it didn't used to be that way because you had cattle roaming around eating grass. And I'll tell you what, we had one house that we sold, and if you didn't mow the grass, I'm not joking, it would be 6 foot tall in a couple of weeks. So I know that actually does happen, because I've had many broken lawnmowers trying to mow that hay mow if we let it go too long, like if you got a lot of rain and you couldn't mow. But what I wanted to talk about here is weather modification. How long y'all think they've been able to control the weather? Like, I know that at least with like World War II, they admit to affecting the weather and making it rain and things like that. You can look that up, different operations here and there. But have they always controlled the weather? Whatever controls this realm, have they always controlled the weather? Like, think about it. There'll be stories about some Greek god got pissed off and called up a storm. Have they always been able to control the weather? I have a feeling that they have. And that they've probably just gotten better and better at it. Or they've just finally started showing us how they do it. Right? Like, we've probably finally collectively got smart enough to see what they're doing. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Like, I think sometimes that they've broken the weather because they'll tell us, oh, this is going to happen here. Especially like in the summertime. Oh, it's going to rain, or oh, it's not going to rain. And they're always wrong. They were right on about this storm, though. And they say it's going to be in the 60s starting next week. And they have everything planned out. Like, Saturday is supposed to go above freezing. Like, how do they really know that? Like, how do they know that these storms in this much in advance, unless they're controlling the weather? Like, I can tell you when it's going to snow or whatever because of my arthritis in my bones. I can feel it and I get in a bad mood. Don't feel good. But how do they know? Yeah, I know there's meteorology, this and that. But I still don't see how you could predict it so well unless you controlled it, Or maybe that's just the conspiracy theorist in me. Sure is nice out here, though. You girls are cold, huh? Is it cold out here? They're probably not that cold. They've been living outside this whole time, so they probably have fur coats. You guys got fur coats on? Yeah? You guys got fur coats? Hi, girls. So cute. The young one doesn't bark yet. Here's the boys over here. I'm crazy out here walking down the road by myself. But it is pretty. And I wanted to get out. Hi. Woof. Get 'em. Get 'em. It's good these dogs bark. Keep their owners safe. Or at least alerted. It's the one good thing about having a dog is they freaking hear everything. And if you're asleep, the robber won't get a jump on you, You'll be awakened, so that's good. So how's the weather where y'all are at? I hope it's all right. I don't know. I have a feeling that some of this really catastrophic weather is going to be tied in with the food shortages they want to produce in 2022. Right? I don't know if you guys ever heard of a Maunder minimum, the grand solar minimum. Well, they had one back in the I want to say it was the 1840s or 60s, somewhere in there. They had a Maunder minimum that it wiped out a lot of people. I think it was like 20% of America starved because they didn't really have a summer. They didn't have much of a growing season, and the crops failed, and they failed to have enough animals to support them. The animals died too, obviously, because you don't have enough food in a place like this. Like, what's there to graze on, right? And so a lot of people died, and remember I had put forward that Cargill website thing, the food chain reaction game, where they were saying that a series of climate catastrophes and, storms and things like that were going to lead to food shortages, right? So they have all this planned out. It's kind of weird. We live in this strange, awful play, basically. Some sort of play going on. And I don't know, I'm just trying to enjoy things as much as I can while I try to wake people up and while I try to think about things. I thought about something last night. I wondered, if you guys have heard of the Georgia Guidestones or not. But one of the tenets of the Georgia Guidestones is to have 500 million people on Earth, in perpetual balance with nature. And I wonder who those 500 million are, right? I bet you those 500 million, are these bluebirds? Are you guys like female bluebirds, maybe? Pretty. The female ones aren't as flashy as the males. That's why they're harder to tell. Birds have been out in full force these days. Anyways, I was wondering, what do they want in 500 million people? Do they want 500 million switch skeletons? Is that what they want? They want to get rid of all of us? I think it'll be interesting. I know a couple of these switch skeleton people. I want to see if they get the vaccine, right? Since they already have the proper genes, at least that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? They already have the proper genes that they want to keep around here. What if they just want to get rid of all regular humans and they want to go back to Nephilim or whatever you want to call them? I don't know what they are. I know they don't have the same skeleton of the gender they claim to be. That's why I call them the switch skeletons. But, they're transformers that rule over us. What if they just want a world of them only? What if that's what they're up to with this vaccine? They're pushing so hard to inject all the old people. I don't know. I feel like they're trying to get rid of us, especially the old and the disabled. But they're even talking now about testing this on children and giving it to children. So I think there's more to it. I mean, if you think about it, that Tuskegee experiment that the NIH did on the poor black sharecroppers here in America, starting in 1932, for 40 years, they had these guys infected with syphilis. They refused to give them medication, right? And in the 1940s, when penicillin became available, so 8 years into this experiment, they could have given these black guys, they could have given them penicillin, but they didn't. And when they went blind and they went mad, and all of the bad things that happen to you when you have syphilis, the scientists told them it was because they had bad blood. And they did this experiment for 40 years. More than 40 years. Up until 1932 to 1957. And they did this experiment. and they watched the guys, they infected their wives, their children were born with syphilis, and they said they were getting free health care. And they had gone to the black churches and told them, hey, we're going to give you free health care. So that's why, they ended up lining up down at the Tuskegee Institute there to get their experimental health care. And here we go again. Is this like another start of a big experiment, only this time using everyone? Right? Everyone will take this vaccine. And if you think about it, they did the same experiment. They sent some of the same scientists from the Tuskegee experiment down to Guatemala a few years after the Tuskegee experiment started. So both of those experiments were running at the same time. And they told the people in Guatemala that they were giving them vaccines. And they were infecting them with syphilis. They were infecting prisoners. Different poor people, under the guise of vaccinations, under the guise of, they are bluebirds. So pretty. Under the guise of helping them. Gosh, the earth is so beautiful. Such a pretty place. Kind of wish I was a bird and I could fly away. God, that's the second Biden sticker I've seen. Jeez. The delusion, the left-right paradigm is pretty damn strong, isn't it? So anyways, what are they talking about? Oh, so how do we know that this vaccine thing, it isn't a cover for a very, very, very long experiment they're about to try on us, right? Because they said Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. And then in that one book it was a document released by the Harvard School of Ethics in April of 2020 called The Roadmap to Pandemic Resilience. They said they wanted to test everyone twice per week, inject them at will, right, depending upon the level of your quote-unquote antibodies. They wanted to add a wing to the military to track and trace and test us, the new medical corps. And then have isolation camps for those who were deemed dangerous or had been exposed, or probably, people who are not compliant. And the hardest thing about all of this is, this has happened before, just under another thing, right? Like, one of the ways that Hitler first demonized the Jews, right, is saying that they were dirty and they were diseased, right? And now it's the same thing, only applied to much larger swaths of the population. And Hitler went after the disabled as well. That was the first people they went after, was the disabled, the retarded, the mentally ill, things like that, right? And everyone was like, yeah, eugenics, yay. Not really thinking that, once they take your rights away, once someone else's rights are taken away, it's just that much easier to take yours away. And I don't know why people don't think to themselves, how easy was it for them to demonize that person and take their rights away? What's going to happen when I don't follow orders, right? Or I don't fit in the right box or whatever. That's what drives me crazy about these people who, for all these years, like when I started reporting about Operation Prism, where, the CIA was spying on all Americans. And this was like before the Patriot Act, right? Before and after the Patriot Act. And people were like, oh, well, Lorna, I have nothing to hide, And I said, you don't understand. You don't get to determine what you should hide or not. The government is determining what you did wrong and what is bad, not you. You can say, oh yeah, I have nothing to hide. And they can say, well, you jaywalked on February 3rd and we saw you. And, that's what they do in China. And you can't get on the train because you jaywalked back on February 3rd. Same bullshit everywhere. I don't know how people can't see that, right? That if you vote someone else's rights away and you're so happy for their rights to be taken away, who's going to stand up when yours are taken away? Because these things just snowball. It's crazy. And I read an article in the Financial Times today where in Britain they're thinking about, if employers can force you to have the vaccine. Well, that's what's coming. That's what's coming. And by law, they can't, in America, I know they can't force you because this hasn't even been approved by the FDA. And I have the vaccine inserts to prove it. It literally says this is not FDA approved. It's approved for emergency use. Anyways, it's just kind of sad. We just kind of surrounded by morons. But at least we can enjoy nature while we can. And I guess that's what I would say for people to do is try to get outside and live your life and have a good time while you can. Enjoy whatever's left. Hopefully we can get out of this if enough of us say no. But I'm not counting on it. I'm not counting on it. I wish it would be so. I wish once in human history we came together against this awful whatever behemoth that rules over us is. It's pretty down there, huh? I love the snow because it's really quiet. All right, well, I'm going to shut up now and stop talking so that I can listen to the quiet.